Action.
Hello, you're tuned in to the Benefit broadcast, the Conceal or Reveal edition.
I'm Char Bailey. I'm a community campaigner, a writer and content creator raising awareness about autism. And I'm joined by the gorgeous Grace Timothy.
Hi, I'm Grace Timothy. I'm a writer and I'm the presenter of the podcast Is It My ADHD? On this episode, we'll be talking about reframing the narrative around neurodivergence, destigmatising the diagnosis process and demystifying what it really feels like to have a neurodivergent condition.
First, we're going to throw it back and talk about our early experiences with neurodivergence. How was school for you, Grace?
School was I feel bad for everyone who was around at that time now, but it was a bitch. It was so hard, and I think the conversation around any kind of neurodivergence just wasn't there at all, so it's no wonder that nobody kind of registered. I worked really, really hard to be the kid that I thought everyone wanted me to be the girl
Completely
that I thought everyone
relate.
wanted to be. Yeah.
Totes relate.
And they're like gender norms, even as like an 8-year-old girl, knowing you're quiet, you're small, you know.
Sit like a lady.
Oh my God, well, yeah, the ladylike stuff, I mean, I just couldn't. And it was like the pain of masking all of that and the physical and emotional toll is still going on now for me, like, you know, 30 years later. It was hardcore, and it was a lot of hiding who I was and physically hiding away from everyone else and all those things. So I think on the surface, everyone would have been like, you were fine, you know, you did all right in school and I didn't get into too much trouble, but actually my whiteness, my family structure around me, all of those things supported me to be what everyone wanted me to be. And behind closed doors, I was a mess.
Yeah, because you're diagnosed late in life, is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah, because I was at school, same, unruly, thought I was friends with everyone, realised later, actually friends with no one. And the masking, almost like, not masking, but creating a character, like creating a version of yourself that can fit into different groups and just be wherever I wanted to be. And it wasn't until like hindsight and reflecting back, I was like, now that I've got my diagnosis in my late 20s, what's me? Who am I? And what are the things that I have decided are a part of me because they were popular or everybody else was doing them? So yeah, loads of unlearning for me. Yeah, I spent so much time as a young person being ashamed of my queerness, ashamed of my blackness, ashamed of my autism. But now I feel like those things are the things that I get to celebrate about me. Those are the things that are different, but different is no longer synonymous with worse. I thought that, because I'm this and this and this, that in comparison to others, I was lesser. But now I know that I'm equal and I'm proud to be me, and I can celebrate all of those intersections and know what they mean, know how they benefit me, and use them to help other people as well.
Let's go back then to intersections that affect the diagnosis process. And obviously diagnosis for both of us being a privilege. You know, what do you think, if you had tried to get that diagnosis any earlier or whatever, what do you think were the things that were getting in the way and that you were kind of misdiagnosed as?
I think all of those intersections, being a girl, a lot of the research or the way that they diagnose is based on small white boys.
Yeah.
Which I'm not, which you are not. I'm assigned female at birth. I'm a person of colour. I'm a member of the queer community. All of these things are other reasons as to why I might have this issue. I could have a mental health problem or an eating disorder because the way the food feels in my mouth. But it was never going to be, you might be autistic because you don't fit that demographic. So I think that was really difficult for me and really tricky to try and navigate.
So the other thing, of course, is like being heard. So not just whether you're able to articulate yourself, which we're privileged to be able to do that and have the language for it and all that stuff, but also to feel heard. And I know, like, as a woman, going to medical professionals quite often and educational professionals is quite difficult. And we do feel like sometimes, we're not being heard and we're maybe a little bit eye-rolly and that kind of thing.
Well, yeah, because as women, we are emotional, aren't we? Too emotional. And we could be hormonal, or we could be being dramatic. We could be being overly sensitive. We could be making a problem where there's nothing there. So, I get that. But I think we've done well to to navigate what it is. And for me, it's really important now to look back at young people and say, well, how can I be an advocate?
Yeah.
What needs changing? How can we be better supportive? How can we show them that, you know, they are people who should be celebrated?
All right, it's time to look at what you've been saying on social media. Are you ready for your first question?
I'm ready.
My friend was recently diagnosed with autism. How can I support her?
Good question, especially when it's a friend, because I think we all know someone that we care about who might be diagnosed with some type of neurodivergence. I think for me, what's really important is to do your own education. So don't go to your friend and say, hey, tell me everything there is to know about autism, because that would be overwhelming. So if you can do some research and find some things that might help support them, that's always important. I'd say number 2, be compassionate and patient. I think whenever anybody has a diagnosis of anything, just because it's not a life-threatening illness doesn't mean that it's not going to have an impact on your friends. So always be compassionate. And also, people often ask about how to support someone with an autism diagnosis, but I'd like them to start asking, how can we celebrate our friends with autism diagnosis?
Yes.
So don't think of it as my friend is so sad and they have autism and I need to support them. Think about ways that their autism that you probably already know makes them amazing. Remind them of the things that are worth celebrating and just be a decent human.
Pretty strong advice there, yeah.
Can I ask a question for you? Yeah, my turn.
Yes.
Mwahaha. Okay, so do you have any specific tips on living with neurodivergence day to day?
Well, I think first of all, look at your behaviours that are coming from your neurodivergence and think about how many of them you really have to adapt and change and manage, because obviously we're kind of conditioned to think that we have to be a certain way, but actually some of those things, like we were saying, are to be celebrated. So don't like fight every impulse would be number 1. Number 2, in terms of where, you know, the societal expectations are so strong that you have to. So whether you're in an office environment or somewhere where you feel like you just have to kind of mask and conform, it's okay, but give yourself a grace period where you just can have like complete alone time through the day, be really honest about what you need and advocate for yourself, like you've been advocating for me constantly. I think just know that there is a fallout from some of those efforts that you have to make. And then also I think look at the relationships that most require you to adapt your behaviours and ask why those relationships require that of you and whether it's worth doing. So for me, I really want to put as much energy into having patience around my daughter, and I want to put that into my relationship with my husband as well. But if it's, you know, like a distant colleague or something, I might question whether actually I'm going to put my energy there or not. Do you know what I mean? And like, just protect yourself until society has learned to protect you better as a sort of supportive network.
Ooh, protect yourself,
Protect yourself
until society has learnt to protect you better.
Ding!
Girl.
Yeah.
That was awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can you tell us about a moment where you felt you needed to hide your neurodivergence?
So many moments.
So many moments.
I think the one that probably has stuck with me the longest outside of childhood is my first job in a magazine.
Oh.
Yeah, so I think I was striving to fit in, obviously from the word go, as you would, anyone would in a new job. But it was obviously, the environment was very specific and quite narrow margins as to how you would fit in. And I remember that feeling of just like, just never gonna be able to do this, just never gonna be able to do it. And just fighting every single day, every impulse to speak out, like try and stay quiet. Try not to crack your really inappropriate jokes. Try not to share every detail of your period with everybody. Like all of those things. I'm an oversharer. That's how I connect with people. Just like, don't connect. Just stay in yourself. Do what you've been told to do and try not to f it up. And inevitably it all up and told everyone everything. And eventually just felt I had to leave because the shame is with you, isn't it? And I think that's something that we carry for a long time. But yeah, I obviously didn't know that I was concealing a neurodivergence. I just thought, I'm concealing everything because everything is terrible.
I'm going to throw it back at you, babe.
Yeah.
Because I feel like we're in it.
Yeah.
So
deep.
Tell me about how your ADHD, your neurodivergence, thinking differently, what's the benefits?
I think that while a lot of people carry shame around this, I love the lack of filter. So I've like grown a slight filter as an adult because I've learned like, oh, you didn't like that when I said that. But I think also a lack of filter is great for a sense of humour, for cutting through obviously and connecting with someone on a deeper level straight away. So I don't really do small talk very effectively. So let's just go straight in, like what is actually important here. And I think that those human connections that you get off the back of that, and also in terms of work, in terms of sharing. So as a writer, I want to be really honest, and people are always really surprised by that. And I'm like, I have no other way. Like it's either this way or I don't share. Like let's just go straight to the core of the issue. So yeah, I think that lack of filter is actually really, really helpful. And there's a fearlessness that comes with that as well, which I think is the fuel behind that. And
so many people use that word like authenticity, but for me, I never see authenticity unless it's in a neurodivergent person.
right.
Like real authenticity is, you know, children, neurodivergence.
Yeah,
Love
because
it.
there is a childlike fearlessness about it. It is that, isn't it? It's like not necessarily knowing the consequences or not letting them steer you.
Yeah, not letting them steer you.
Yeah.
We're not steered by consequence.
Oh, ding. So, Char, let's talk about neurodivergence and gender.
First of all, let's a blanket statement say that the language used around neurodivergence is not progressive. Everything's about little white boys, let's be real. And so when we're talking from the perspective of both being assigned female at birth and also just to mark a point that gender is not the same as sexuality, gender expression and sexual identity are not the same. So although somebody might express their gender in a certain way, doesn't mean that their sexuality has changed. Cool. I love neurodiverse people when it comes to gender because I think, for me, certainly, I don't know how to sit like a lady or dress like one or act like one. And in fact, I do, but I don't care about what society expects me to be. I want to feel fluid. And I think from the community that I am involved in and the people that I know, there are a lot of people who are, I think it's 70% of people who are non-binary, also neurodivergent. And having that lack of a need to conform, to express myself in a way that is set in somebody else's version of who I'm supposed to be or how I'm supposed to present, I think that's the link for me. My neurodivergence helps me look at gender as something that doesn't really exist to me.
People quite often struggle with how to talk about neurodivergence, especially if they're like new to the community. What's your sort of number one language to avoid?
Number one language to avoid is we are not high functioning or low functioning. Never ever call us that. What is your top tip for being open about neurodivergence?
First of all, sit with your own diagnosis, whether that's self-diagnosis or whether you've seen someone, and just talk about it in a safe space so that you feel completely able to be completely honest and open about how you feel about it and explore the different avenues of it. And then just go for it. Like I find it difficult to think of how to tell someone to do it openly because it's the only way to do it. Do you know what I mean? I think if you have ADHD, and I think there's a lot of correlation with autism as well, you don't necessarily have that filter, and like there should be no shame attached to that. So if you have something that you want to openly and honestly express, just do it. I think we've covered quite a lot in that conversation.
I think we have. It's been amazing talking to you. Thank you for being so candid and authentic.
Oh, same back to you. Thank you so much, Char. And thank you for listening to the Benefit broadcast, the Conceal or Reveal edition. Please like and subscribe and tell all your friends.
Tune in next week for another great episode with a new set of hosts. Bye.
Bye.